We are now live. Raj, thanks for joining, man. I really appreciate it. So, for those of you who don't know, Raj is, one of the people that I met who knows about blockchain, and he's had some projects within that field.
Mhm.
So it's very good to have him here to talk about some of the basics and
Thanks for
some of his knowledge.
thanks for having me, Reza.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining, Raj. So, Raj, what's up, man? How's everything?
Things are fine. The month is going well, and I'm looking forward to the holidays. And yeah, how about
That's
you?
nice, man. Same, yeah, same. I'm actually off, so enjoying
Okay.
some time off. It's been a long year, so definitely needed
Yeah,
that.
it's been a pretty long year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
a long and very weird year, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been. I've been asking myself a lot of questions about this year, and most of them are unanswered. But
Yeah,
yeah, here we are.
yeah. Next year is gonna be better,
Absolutely. Anything's better than this year.
100%. So Raj, for those who don't know,
Hmm.
who is Raj? What is your story?
Okay. So I'm gonna what is my story? Okay, so I am I'm a lawyer licensed in India, and I started my association with blockchain technology, if that's what you if that's what you want me to start with. So I started my association back when I was working as a technology lawyer in Bangalore, India,
Hmm.
and I was sort of dealing with. I did not deal directly with a legal issue involving blockchain, but I came across it on various occasions and just tried to understand what it's all about. But before that, I should probably mention that I have a bachelor's in arts, specializing in economics and political sciences, and then I did a bachelor of laws from KIIT University, India. And yeah, so I was working as a tech lawyer in Bangalore for a few years, and that's when I first heard about this technology. And then I decided to do a master's degree in law as well, and that's when I came to Osgoode Hall Law School here in Toronto,
Hmm.
and I got in touch with more people who have heard or who talk about this technology, about blockchain, and I decided to really get into deep research into it. So I mostly spoke to my professors, and I had a couple of research papers, not a couple, I think exactly four research papers that I had to write during my master's. And I decided to dedicate three of them on different angles of the law and its application and the application of blockchain in those practice areas. So that's how I came to know about this technology, and that's also a bit of my background as well.
Interesting. So you first started with economics and political science, then you went on to study law, right?
Right.
And more
That was actually
specifically,
a combined degree. So when I went into law school, it was already preordained that I would do a combined bachelor's in law and economics, sort of.
I
Yeah.
see. And when you studied law, you said it was in the context of technology, right?
No, so I studied a general law program, and it was mostly, some of it was specialized in international law. So there was that angle to it. But I also studied other areas, just like a regular law bachelor's degree.
Hmm, I
Yeah.
see. So I do want to ask, all about
Hmm.
the context and the use of blockchain within law and what that would look like in the future. But before even getting into that, for those who
Hmm.
aren't really sure, because it does seem like a black box to many people. So I wanted to know from
Yeah.
your perspective,
Hmm.
what really is blockchain?
Okay. So I'm going to start with I would start with an actual definition, but before that, I think I should give a more of a, let's say, a simpler definition before the official one.
Hmm.
So blockchain it's a network. I would personally define it as a network. We all know how the, if we take an example of a computer network, which is basically a link between 7 or 8 computers, let's say.
Hmm.
Okay, and it's interconnected with each other. So it forms or it creates a network. So in the context of blockchain, it's the basic backbone of it is that it's a network. It's a network of nodes. In this case, in blockchain's case, it's a network of nodes. And I'm gonna explain what a node is and all of that. But before we go there, I'm going to start with the example of a ledger. So most of us know a ledger as sort of a transaction record where we log in all of our expenses and our earnings, and we do a record of it, all the entire record of all our transactions are maintained on a ledger. So you know what I'm talking about, right?
I have heard of a ledger, but
Right.
can we expand into that? So what exactly is that as well?
So in a more traditional perspective, a ledger is basically a notebook where you record all your transactions.
Yeah, okay, that
Let's say.
makes sense.
Okay. And you record all the amounts and the dates and the times and all the details, let's say.
Hmm.
Okay. So if we were to compare a ledger with something more complicated as blockchain, I would simply call blockchain an online electronic distributed ledger. So I just added 3 more variables.
Electronic, online, and distributed, right?
Correct, correct. When you add those 3 features, then it becomes a blockchain network.
Hmm. And,
Okay.
and what's okay? Yeah, please continue.
Yeah. So I would say that if I were to now get into, okay, I'm gonna get into my personal definition, and then I'm gonna get into a more official definition.
Hmm.
So I would, given everything that I have read about, I would define blockchain as a type of distributed ledger technology. It's a type of distributed ledger technology, which I'm going to explain after this. There are some of these definitions which are sort of, these words have to be defined, otherwise whatever I'm saying would not be completely understood by our listeners.
Yeah.
So I will explain what a DLT is. But a blockchain is a type of DLT which consists of blocks of information.
Hmm.
So when we spoke about a ledger, what we did was we spoke about a notebook where you record all of your transactions history. Let's say, like, something that you ask from your bank, that I want to know about my 6 months transaction history. Can you give it to me? We do that all the time.
Yeah.
So think about blockchain as similar to an account statement of our transaction history. Only the only difference is that in blockchain's context, a transaction history, each step of a transaction is a block. Okay, and it's chained to the next block. That's why the term has been defined as a blockchain. So when you take a transaction and you record it online, and you put each step of a transaction is a block,
Hmm.
and all the blocks are chained with each other, that's why it's called a blockchain.
I see. So it's basically information that is interconnected to one another in an
Right,
online platform.
right,
Okay.
exactly. then you add certain features to it to make it more colorful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is you have this information, this hash code, this hash code, which is there in every block, and it's reciprocated in the next block, and then the one after that, and then the one after that. So it's all each block is interconnected with the previous block and the last block. So each step of a transaction is connected with the previous step and the next step. Okay, so when you keep adding steps in a transaction, let's say, let's take an example of a real estate transaction. So you enter into the contract. That's one step of a transaction. So one step gets created. Then you make the deposit for your new apartment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next step gets created. The seller acknowledges your payment. The next step is created. So every step is a step in a transaction, right?
That makes sense.
So
Okay.
So what a blockchain does is it creates blocks for each step in a transaction, and it's chained to the last step and the next step,
Hmm.
so that there's a sort of a flow to it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And do you know why this was out of what sort of need was blockchain really created? Is it because people do talk about decentralized systems and obviously taking out third party from various transactions that take place, whether it's through between contracts or financial transactions or what have you. But is
Mhm.
this the reason why blockchain technology was created in the first place, or maybe one of the reasons?
It's the creation of blockchain technology is it's a combination, or it's an amalgamation of many different phenomenons that happen together, and then this is what they create. It started a movement, and then
Hmm.
one of its main applications, that is Bitcoin, that also was a major force behind the whole blockchain movement, which I'm going to get into after this. But I think one of the examples why blockchain came into the whole mainstream recognition is that um, during the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of banks were bailed out by the government. A lot of companies were bailed out by the government, and it was funded by in the US. That's what I'm referencing, by the way.
Mhm.
So a lot of banks were bailed out in the sense they were paid with taxpayers' money to to get there so that they don't become bankrupt.
Yep.
Okay, so that was one of the reasons, and it's the financial crisis is just one example. It happens everywhere. It happens in every country, and there are many ways with which the people of a nation doesn't always have they don't have the entire details or information about how their government is functioning, spending its money, allocating its resources in an
Right.
economy.
Right.
Right. So there's a lot of gray area, there's always gray areas, and experts and analysts would say that, we can't control this, we can't see that, that information is missing, we don't have that data. So there's always, there's a lack of control, let's just say. Okay.
So would it make sense to say, one
Mhm.
of the advantages that it brings about is transparency, and if, let's say, major corporations are
Mhm.
operating with blockchain technology, then
Mhm.
all of their transactions and the inflow and outflow of information would be stored in blocks for everyone else to see and verify as well.
That's for public blockchains, yes. So we also have public blockchains and private blockchains. So when you have a public blockchain, then you can see all the transaction details in that blockchain. Yes, everything that happens on that blockchain is visible to anyone. But in a private blockchain, which also happens, which are also very popular, by the way, it's where let's say 10 private parties decide to enter into a transaction, so they just enter into it with each other, and it's a private transaction between private parties, so they don't always need to include anyone else in that. But then some of the more public stuff, which are supposed to be let's say, which are supposed to be completely public information, can and will take place on a blockchain network that is public,
Interesting.
if that
Okay.
answers your question.
Yeah, 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 that answers the question. So, taking a step back again,
Hmm.
what uses does this have? Because, at this point, not a lot of people actually, either know about it or are utilizing this technology. And it's said that with the coming years and, up until 2030, there's going
Hmm.
to be a lot more use to it, and 10% of the world's GDP is going to be stored as, let's say, cryptocurrencies. So
Really? Hmm.
yeah, that was a study. I was reading an article from Deloitte, actually. It was either
Okay.
Deloitte or McKinsey that were,
Okay.
projecting the future of blockchain, specifically cryptocurrency. So, you know, what uses do you think this is going to have from your perspective?
I mean, Deloitte and McKinsey, they do have a lot of research and consultation and white papers on emerging technologies, and most of their projections are mostly correct, I would say. So that is a pretty realistic, almost realistic view of how the technology is progressing.
Hmm.
So, I mean, before we get into use cases and major industry applications, let's just quickly see the classification of all of this,
Yeah,
because
that's a good
I,
idea. Let's do that.
because I'm sure both of us, we haven't gone into the classification of what is what and what comes under what.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, whenever I speak with people, even myself up until a few months ago, I
Right.
would really confuse these classifications. Okay, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain. So,
Right.
let's see what the taxonomy looks like.
I taught myself by drawing a flow chart. So I think it's pretty easy. Um, so I sort of put a main heading as different type of ledgers,
Hmm.
and I did a broad classification, which is one type is a distributed ledger technology, and another type is a non-distributed ledger technology. So which are traditional ledgers, non-distributed, but we are going to be talking about the distributed ledger technology.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So a distributed ledger technology is a decentralized database of a transactional, an electronic form of storage of transactional records. Okay. So it's decentralized in the sense that it's not backed up on one single server. That's the most simplified way I can think about it.
Yeah,
It's
that makes
not
sense. So,
backed up.
so all of the information is not stored in one server in a specific place. It's distributed.
Correct.
Okay.
It is stored on, so if there are 50 parties on that blockchain, it is equally stored with all 50 parties at 50 different locations.
Right.
Right. So every party in that ecosystem has basically stores all the information in their local server.
That makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So that's why it's a distributed ledger technology. It's a decentralized network.
Hmm.
Okay. So one of the many examples of a distributed ledger technology is blockchain. There are many other types of distributed ledger technology. Some of them are older than blockchain. Some of them are more advanced than blockchain.
So off the top of your mind, would you like
Right.
know another example?
Yeah. Of course. There's one example. It's called Hedera hash graph. So it's a more it's let's just call it a more advanced form of blockchain network.
Interesting. Okay.
which is different than blocks. Okay, it's got other variables and other algorithms, which yeah, so it's just more complicated in the sense that it can, it's more, how should I say, higher volume of information can be transmitted, and more networks and more systems and more higher capabilities and blah blah blah,
So if
basically.
it's better and it has all of these capabilities, why is it not as popular as blockchain?
Because it's not developed properly yet.
Okay, okay.
Blockchain got a head start in the sense that it sort of it's almost been 10 years that it's come out, 10 or 11 years. But all of these other distributed ledger technologies are pretty new.
Hmm.
So it's being developed. There's Hashgraph, there's Holochain, there's Ripple, there's DAG, there's one called IOTA. So these are all competing technologies, but they're not as developed as blockchain.
I see.
But
Okay,
in,
okay.
yeah, in one way or the other, where if blockchain is developed properly and adopted in the mainstream, then these technologies will also be competing with blockchain and doing its role, playing its role, basically.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And so now let's talk about blockchain. So inside blockchain, we have one of the use cases of blockchain is in the form of cryptocurrencies. And one of the examples of cryptocurrency is Bitcoin.
Hmm.
So now do we see the classification?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. We have
Yeah.
blockchain, and it contains different forms of technologies within one of them is
Network.
crypto.
It can have a variety of applications. It
Hmm.
can have a variety of forms. It can have a variety of effects, impacts, and a culmination of all of these many different variables can result in cryptocurrencies. It can result in smart contracts. These are all use cases of blockchain
That makes sense.
or
So
examples.
something like Ethereum is not a cryptocurrency though.
It is a cryptocurrency.
Oh, is it?
It
Okay.
is a cryptocurrency. Yeah, it is a cryptocurrency, and it's an example of a usable blockchain network
Hmm.
that has been made in a way so that it can be used as a very scalable cryptocurrency. It's
Hmm.
doing really well, I believe.
Yeah, Ethereum is doing really well. So within blockchain, we have cryptocurrencies. What
Right.
other sorts of networks are there other than cryptocurrencies?
So cryptocurrencies, let's say, it's one of the applications or one of the outcomes of having the whole concept of a blockchain network.
Hmm.
It's a very major outcome of understanding of the creation of blockchain technology. It's a very major outcome of the creation.
Hmm.
There are some other outcomes. I would call it an outcome because these are a combination of application and sort of other things as well. It's,
Hmm.
how should I say, I mean, these can be called an application, these can be called an impact, these can be called an example. So I'm just calling it an outcome so that
Outcome.
it encompasses all of these um, attributes.
Right.
Okay. So another outcome would be the whole concept of smart contracts.
Hmm.
That's another outcome. Another outcome would be its communication transparency, its immutability. Immutability means you can't alter or change any of the transaction history or details. That's another outcome.
Interesting. Yeah, so it stays there forever within the network or the chain.
Yeah, so the chances of a hostile party trying to attack it and modify it are very low
Because it's distributed.
because it's distributed. So technically, they would have to have established their attack on majority of the nodes or computers on that network,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
means a physical sort of physical attack on the facility where the node is located.
Hmm.
So the chances are very low. because there's still other nodes which are not attacked who can make sure that the integrity is not impaired
Right. Okay.
from
That
a
makes sense.
from a cybersecurity perspective.
That makes sense. So that's one of the other characteristics is immutability.
Right.
Hmm.
It's completely, at least till the present moment of the technology, it's immutable.
Hmm.
It's not been, no one can modify it so far, at
Right.
least till the present day. Some things can change tomorrow. Someone can come out with a new way of probably changing it or something. They're sure there are players like that in every field.
Yeah, with time, people develop these
Yeah,
skills to hack through different sorts of
correct.
networks and systems. Yeah.
Correct. Nothing is, nothing is invulnerable. But
Yeah. Yeah.
the founders of this technology and the creators and the inventors found very legitimate ways to counter these attacks. So for now, it's pretty much immutable.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
So
So
we talked about the classifications, right?
correct.
And what
Correct.
blockchain consists of. Now,
Right.
one of them was cryptocurrencies, and then you go
Correct.
within, it's going to be, all the sorts of buzzwords people hear like Bitcoin and Litecoin and
Right.
Ethereum, etc. So each of these
Right.
have a specific use, right?
Each of these are specific brands of cryptocurrencies,
Hmm.
and some of these, like for example, the backbone of Bitcoin may be slightly different from the backbone of Ethereum, or some of the other cryptocurrencies like Litecoins or Dogecoins, or
Hmm.
the other ones. There are many. Off the top of my head, I can't remember too many, but there are
Yeah,
many.
there's a lot of them for sure.
Yeah. So they, they employ slightly different characteristics of this technology, and they tweak it in their own unique way, so that they can get maximum efficiency and use out of it.
Hmm. Interesting. So what do you see the future of this technology and these different sorts of outcomes of blockchain looking like? Do you think it's going to be something that will be more mainstream and used by like a wide variety of institutions and bodies, or will it continue to stay as it is with people still using basically the dollar or the traditional currency?
So um, if you really want to compare cryptocurrency to actual fiat money, which we call currencies today, um, I would say they would just be one of the, I don't know if they'll be completely a mainstream player as fiat money, but they will likely achieve a very competitive position in the market, and they'll play along with whatever other currencies that we have today. If we compare cryptocurrencies to the dollar or to other currencies, we can also compare stocks to tokens, or coins being exchanged on a coin exchange. So we can also compare that as, not just to a money, but also treat it as an asset to a certain extent.
Interesting. So these tokens that you're talking about, so let's say a platform that you can trade cryptocurrencies on, like Coinbase, over there, when you
Correct.
buy Bitcoin, you're really buying tokens, right?
Right. Right. And it's giving you the right to whatever specified amount of a specific cryptocurrency, whatever it is.
Hmm.
So you have the right to sell it off, or to gain its proceeds, whatever gains it makes in the next few years. You have the right to those gains, or you can sell it off and get back real money. So you have these options if you were to trade
Do you
cryptos.
think
Or
the prices of these sorts of coins let's say Bitcoin or let's say Ethereum will
Mhm.
continue rising in the future, or do you think it's going to plateau?
It's so difficult to really have a concrete answer to these things. I was looking at the price rise, and it's absolutely nuts. Yesterday I saw it was like 30,000 Canadian dollars.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
That's
lot.
insane. That's a it's on an absolute high right now. That's all I can say. I mean, maybe the pandemic had some effects on it, or maybe people are, yeah, I believe there could have been some effects, you know.
100%. I remember back in I think it was November or December 2017, it was at an
Right.
all-time high, but then recently, like you said,
2017,
it
yeah.
beat that record.
Right, yeah. At that point it went up to 19,000 plus USD, and now I think 30,000 Canadian dollars would be something around, I don't know,
Yeah, in
25,000
in the
USD or
past
something.
year, it's rise by 226%.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of appreciation for
Right.
if you
What
think
do you
about
what
it
do
as
you
a stock.
attribute that to? Would you know, is it because the popularity in its consumption or use cases is rising, or is it just a bubble?
Um, I would call it much more than a bubble. It could be one of the factors could be that more software engineers are putting their time and energy into this. They're developing more applications, and they're strengthening the network. They're fixing all the bugs. And as and when technology becomes older, it
Hmm.
becomes more secure, and all its problems are mostly fixed to an extent, right? So if we used emails, starting in the 1995s or something, it used to take a minute or 2 minutes to send an email without any attachments.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes half a second or 1 microsecond right now to send 5 MB in an email of PDF files or whatever.
Mhm.
So as and when a technology progresses, the chances are that it'll be developed to the T. All the bugs are going to be cleared out, and they're going to look at each and every problem. Eventually those problems will be solved and new problems will arise. It's a new challenge at
Yeah,
that point.
there's always a new challenge, always.
Right. So I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why it's doing so well today, or why it's that could be a reason why all these developers who are
Yeah,
being hired or employed to work on the servers of these cryptocurrency companies, that they're working hard and they're trying to develop the technology. People are investing. That's helping them.
for
It's
sure.
all, yeah.
For sure. So I got a question. You talked about developers. I wanted to know, maybe you don't know this, but maybe you do. So I
Hmm.
wanted to know how widespread is blockchain development right now? Because I have this feeling that
Hmm.
there is a shortage of supply, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
demand for these sorts of competencies, which people still haven't caught up to yet. So would you think that blockchain development is something that is similar to traditional, development positions and competencies like learning Python or Java or etc., or is it a whole new body that needs to be learned from the base up?
Oh, good news there. Very good news there. So, blockchain, the whole backbone and the architecture of blockchain and smart contracts can be pretty much developed over programming languages like Solidity, JavaScript, PHP, all of this, Python, Java, C++. I'm pretty sure C++ would, maybe not, but at least I know for sure that these languages, if you know these languages, you can pretty much do your thing, and you can maybe create your own blockchain network. So you
Interesting.
don't need to
Okay,
know
so
a
so
new
they've
programming
integrated that.
language.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So you don't. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I can imagine because, as it stands today as well, there's still a shortage of data scientists, data analysts. Well, not data analysts, but mostly data scientists and people who
Hmm.
understand, let's say, machine learning algorithms. So
Hmm.
I assume that when it comes to blockchain development, we still have a shortage of skill and talent as well.
I mean, I don't know. Would you say that the tech industry has any shortage of skill and talent? I mean, they keep saying that, but
Yeah,
new
they keep
people
saying
join them every year, right?
that. They do keep
I
saying
mean, it
that.
is,
That's true.
yeah, and it is becoming bigger and bigger every year. I mean, now they're trying to think of a way to regulate Facebook because it's just so big right now. They have so much data, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
So,
as they
yeah.
move towards the future, they get bigger companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon. They will either decompose into multiple bodies to kind of
Hmm.
have the system decentralized, just like you were talking about blockchain, or
Hmm.
they will continue to grow and become monopolies and just control the world. I mean, they are controlling the world right now, but they're getting bigger and bigger
Would
too.
you, yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, would you ever believe that a company like Facebook, a social network company, is bigger than an oil company? Would that
No,
have made
that
any
wouldn't that
sense
wouldn't
to
cross
you?
my mind. But the way that it grew and the companies that it acquired, like Instagram and WhatsApp as well, and
Right.
they're controlling almost all sorts of communication platforms that people use on an everyday
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah. And I don't mean no hatred here, but then they're, they're really doing so well, overly well, that their competitors are just standing no chance against them.
100%. I was reading actually Peter Thiel's book. It's called Zero to One. Very good book.
Hmm.
Really recommend it. And Peter Thiel, he was the first outside investor of Facebook when he first met Mark Zuckerberg and
The
Sean,
Winklevoss, yeah.
yeah, from the founder of Napster. I forgot his name, Sean something. Um, but anyways, in his book, he was
Hmm.
talking about the patterns and the characteristics and traits of monopolies and why they stand the test of time and continue to rise up above the competition and crush them. And
Right.
Facebook ticks off all of the marks of a successful, very successful monopoly, which is here to stay, and they're not really going anywhere anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I would say that I think the entire intent behind the whole blockchain movement was that information, data, and information security is more democratized, and it reaches the greater people. That was one of the intentions behind the whole blockchain movement, and that the common person, the common individual would have access to what goes on, how government spends their money, and if they can sort of have a more efficient version of the whole banking industry. That was one of the reasons why blockchain was really created and developed, so
That makes
that the
sense.
whole, yeah, the banking, the finance industry, uh, it is pretty bureaucratic, and we know that we don't completely know about everything that goes on, right?
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I guess blockchain technology would be a response to this bureaucracy and to this centralization,
Yeah,
right? To break it down, to
yeah, yeah.
decompose it.
To
Yeah,
break it down,
that
to
makes
break it
sense.
down. That
So,
that was one of the, yeah. No,
no,
sorry.
go
Go ahead.
ahead, Raj. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was one of the intentions, and another intention was we should have a more efficient technology that is more real time, in the sense that if there are 50, 100 parties in a transaction, all of them should have the real-time access to any developments in a transaction that they're part of. So there shouldn't be any delay. Everyone should know everything at the same time.
Hmm.
No one should have an edge over the other, something like that.
Yeah,
If it's a, yeah,
asymmetry, no asymmetry of information.
right. It
That
should be
makes sense.
quick, it should be fast, it should be real time, and it should be transparent. That was These were the goals.
Yeah,
So
these were the
yeah,
founding principles.
yeah, yeah.
That makes sense. So, Raj, we're at about the 45 minute mark.
Hmm.
I just want to, thank you for coming on. This was obviously a very, fundamental preliminary chat.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as we move forward and dive into more detail, it will be great to have you on here, use your experience and your insights and expertise to dig deeper into these topics.
Absolutely. This is a very big it's a very big example of what one of the things that's going to really happen in the future, going to become more mainstream. So it's always beneficial for all of us to talk more about it and discuss more possibilities.
100%, 100%. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, man.
Absolutely, it was a complete pleasure. I, uh, I heard some other episodes of your podcast, and yeah, I really like it. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon, Raj.
All right, man.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you. Have a nice rest of the Sunday.
You too. You too. Take care.
All right. All right.